Welcome to Grammar Logic in Depth. In this video, we take a deep dive into the future. Now, if you want to get the most from this, you really need to understand three basic concepts about the future before we begin. The first of these is the use of will for a sudden decision about the future. I will fly to Berlin on Monday. The second idea is that of a plan, and we use going to express this idea. So I'm going to fly to Berlin on Monday. And the last concept here is that of an arrangement or something that's fixed in the future. And to do this, we use present ing, which can also be called present continuous or present progressive. And here we would say, I'm flying to Berlin on Monday. Now, if you're not sure about these concepts, then why not check out my grammar logic video, which you'll find in the links below. So in business English, it's a very good foundation to understand this idea of will as a sudden decision, going to as a plan, and ing as something that is an arrangement or something that's fixed in the future. Because a lot of the conversations that we have about the future in business English are connected with these three ideas. But obviously, the future in English is a little bit more complicated than that. And so today, let's talk through the other uses for will, other ways of expressing plans, other ways of expressing fixed things in the future, and a few other bits besides that as well. So let's start with will. As I said, will is used for this sudden decision, but we can also use it to describe a fact. The sun will rise tomorrow morning. Now, that's quite clear to understand, the difference between a fact and a sudden decision. And I think it's also quite clear to work out the difference between a fact and an arrangement. Arrangements can be put into diaries or into calendars. A fact is just something that happens day after day after day, which we have no control over. However, there's also another use for will that can be a little bit more confusing. And this one is when we use will to describe something that is generally true. The courier normally arrives at about 8 o'clock in the morning. So I think he'll arrive about 8 o'clock tomorrow. That could sound like an arrangement, but it's not really, it's not fixed. This is just something that we know that happens on this person's schedule. Normally around about 8 o'clock, the courier arrives, but it's not written into a calendar. It's not a meeting that I have arranged with you. A little bit more confusing is when we use will for a promise. I will do that for you. Because this can sound like an arrangement. And these two ideas can be quite close together when I say, yes, I will do that for you by Monday. But here, we're talking about two quite different things. A promise is when I say, yes, that gets done for you. But there doesn't have to be a time set for that. With an arrangement, then there is. There is a date, a time, a month, a year, something like this, that we know that we have made an arrangement to meet or get something done by that point. So they can cross over. Promises and arrangements can cross over a little bit, but they are quite different. Okay? The last thing that we can use will for is to make a prediction. And this is when I say something like, oh, I think we'll sell a lot more product this month. This is just like a feeling from inside. I'm not looking back at previous sales figures, because if I were doing that, that would be a forecast. If I'm making a guess about the future, then it's a prediction. I think we'll sell more product this month. Now, if I look back at the previous sales figures for the last 10 years, and I can see that every July we sell more product, then here I can make a forecast. And when we make a forecast, we don't use will, we use going to. And here we can say, well, for the last 10 years, we have sold more product in July. So I think this July, we're also going to sell more product. Okay, so now we know that we can use going to when we make a forecast, and we can also use going to when we talk about a plan. But there are other ways of expressing the idea of a plan in the future. And here we use the same basic structure of I'm going to fly to Berlin, so this idea of going to and how that's built into the sentence. But we can replace going with other words. So we can say I'm going to fly, I'm intending to fly, I'm planning to fly, I'm aiming to fly, and I'm hoping to fly. Okay? Now, the question here is, well, is there any difference in meaning between these? And the answer here is, well, it often depends on which exercise book or which language trainer you talk to. A lot of the time, people will say that there is not a lot of difference between going to, intending to, planning to. But in some books, they say that there is an order to these things. And so the strongest form of a plan is going to, and then intending to, planning to, aiming to, and then hoping to. Which is correct? Well, that's actually very hard to say. Going to is definitely a strong plan. Intending, planning, and aiming are weaker plans. And hoping to occupies an interesting area in the English language. Hoping to is often described as being a very weak plan, and in some cases that is correct. But in other cases, we find this is where language and culture become connected. And often, especially in UK English, hoping to is used as a polite way of saying, no, I can't do that for you. So, can you deliver this by Wednesday? Well, we're hoping to deliver it to you by Wednesday, which really means, I'm very sorry, but I don't think we really can get it to you by then. Okay, so I've talked about other uses for will, other ways of expressing plans other than going to. What about the last one? What about the idea of something that's fixed or arranged in the future? This idea of the meeting is starting at 10 o'clock. Can we say basically the same thing with another expression? Well, yes, we can. We can say the meeting starts at 10 o'clock. So we're using here present simple. Is there a difference between these two? Well, yes, there is. And again, depending on your trainer or your exercise book or grammar book that you've read, you might come across two different descriptions. The most common of these is to say that present simple in the future is used to describe timetables. And so you look along the timetable and say, oh yes, the bus leaves at 8 a.m, 9 a.m, and 10 a.m. But this isn't, strictly speaking, correct. It's not just used for timetables. The real difference between these two is that the ing form is used to express a personal idea in the future, and that the present simple is impersonal. What does that mean? Because that doesn't sound very easy to understand. Do I have a personal connection to this thing? Well, if I'm looking at all of this timetable, then I don't have a personal connection. What I'm saying in there is, oh yes, there's a bus, it leaves at 8, 9, and 10. But if I'm running to catch that bus, then that's quite different. I don't want to miss that bus, and I'll say, oh, the bus is leaving at 8. Now, with native speakers, you often hear this in the office when they want to or don't want to go to a meeting. There are some meetings that we all enjoy going to and some that we really don't want to go to. And you often hear this with the native speakers, and they say, oh yes, the meeting is starting at 8. Yeah, they're happy to go to that meeting. Or they look at their watch and they say, oh yeah, the meeting starts at 8. And the tone of voice and the fact that they use present simple for future, not present ing, tells you that they're kind of distancing themselves from this idea. They don't really want to go there. Okay? So that gives us two ways of expressing the idea of an arrangement in the future. Okay, so is that the complete story about future in English? Well, no. There are quite a few other ways of expressing the future in English, but most of them, for day-to-day business English, we don't really need. However, there are two that is worth mentioning here, which, depending on your business role, you may or may not find useful. It's up to you whether you think you should use them. And the first of these is future continuous. I will be working on this for the next 2 weeks. Okay? I will be working on this for the next 2 weeks. Now, we can use future continuous to express quite a few different things. But here, in respect to business English, the one that we really need to understand is the idea of a continuous action or ongoing action in the future. And so when I said I will be working on this for the next few weeks, then that means for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, I will be working on this project. It's a continuous action in the future. Okay? The last idea that I want to talk about here is future perfect. We will have completed the project by Monday. Okay? We will have completed the project by Monday. And this expresses the idea that we're working on a project and that we know that the completion date is at this point in the future. Okay? So a process comes to an end. We will have completed the project by Monday. Okay? Now the structure is very, very similar to present perfect, but we put an extra will in there. We will have completed. Okay? You will often also hear this expressed in the passive. Now, here this is something that you just need to recognize when you hear it. You don't really need to learn it yourself at this kind of level. All you need to do is to know that it means basically the same thing. And the sentence is as follows. This project will have been completed by Monday. This project will have been completed by Monday. Okay? And this is a passive sentence when we're focusing on the project rather than the people taking part in the project. Okay? big problems when sounding professional when using business English as your second language is that many people only ever use will. Now, will works for many different things, as we've discussed. We can use it for a promise, for a general future, for a prediction, and for a sudden decision. But to sound professional, we have to be able to use going to, and we also need to be able to use present ing as future, present progressive, present continuous as future. If you want to take the next step up, it's also a very good idea to have it squared away in your head that you understand the difference between a prediction and a forecast. Predictions are guesses about the future. Oh, I don't know, I think it'll rain tomorrow. I think we'll sell more product. That doesn't sound very professional. But a forecast, if you remember, is based on looking back in the past and looking at your sales figures from the past. And here you can say, well, I think we're going to sell more product. Okay? And especially if you're talking to native speakers, the difference between using will and going to here is very important. The will really does sound like a guess. It doesn't sound very professional. But the going to, that sounds professional. Okay? When we use going to talk about a plan in the future, we're expressing quite a strong plan. So it can also be helpful to remember one of the other three, either intending, planning, or aiming to. Okay? Here, this can serve two purposes. We can have it for two reasons. One, we can either use it to express a slightly weaker plan, or so we don't have to keep on repeating the same phrase. We're going to do this, then we're going to do that, then we're going to do this. And you can say, well, we're going to do that, then we're intending to do this, then we're going to do that, and then we're intending to do this. Not repeating the same phrases can help you sound far more professional. Okay? When it comes to talking about arrangements in the future, for our active speaking, all we really need is this idea of ing. Yes, the meeting is starting at 3 o'clock. Why only ing? Well, that's because it's personal to us. But we do also need to understand passively that we can use present simple for the future as well. But this can be quite a tricky thing to get correct, and so it's probably better just to stay with the idea of ing and just remember that the present simple can be used for the future, but we don't really need to use it ourselves. Okay? As I said before, the future continuous, so I will be working on this for the next few weeks. Well, this is your choice. In your business, do you often need to express this idea? If the answer is yes, then perhaps you should learn this. I say perhaps because at this point we also need to think about the level of English of the people that you are talking to. If you're speaking with native speakers, then yes, fine, use future continuous. But most business English is from non-native speaker to non-native speaker. And so therefore, how good is their English? Are they actually going to understand what you're saying? If the answer is yes, if their English is very good, then go ahead and use it because it would improve communication. But if their English isn't that good, you might actually confuse them. This is your choice, whether you think this is a good idea or not, depending on the kind of people you're talking to. And again, for future perfect, we have the same considerations, the same things that we need to think about. Will they understand the idea that I'm expressing here, or will it just confuse them? We will have completed this by the 14th. Do they understand that the project is finished on the 14th, or are they thinking you're starting it on the 14th? Again, How good is their English? If their English is of a high standard, use it. If their English is not of a high standard, then you should not use it. This is about professional business English, about helping the other people that you're working with understand you. As I often say, business English is about good communication. It's not about grammar and it's not about the words. It's about making sure that I can understand you and you can understand me. Okay? Okay, so how do we go about remembering all of this? If you look back at the beginning of this video, you'll realize there's a lot of information there. Will you be able to remember all of this? Probably not. Don't even try to remember all of it. What you need to do here is to think about when you speak business English in your job. What ideas in the future do you need to express? Do you often need to talk about forecasts? If that is correct, then you need to remember to use going to. If you have to talk about long, ongoing processes in the future, then you're going to need future continuous to do that. Okay? If you often talk about plans, then you're going to need to learn more than just going to express a plan. The absolute basics that you need are will, as this sudden decision about the future, going to for a plan, and in, present continuous or present progressive, to express the idea of arrangement. These are the basics, okay? So will, going to, ing. They're the absolute basics. What you put on top of that should be connected directly to your work. Why? Because then it's going to be easier to remember, okay? So go back, have a look at the beginning of this video and figure out which ones of these concepts you're going to use. Which ones do you need? Which ones will be helpful for you? And then sit down and write out a number of sentences. If you don't like writing things out, then speak them out loud. Or maybe you could picture yourself in your mind sitting in the meeting and having a conversation with somebody and using those expressions. Whatever works for you to help you remember, use it. Okay? And if you want to understand a little bit more about learning techniques, then you'll find another video linked below. But remember, make it real to you. If it connects to you, then you're going to remember it. If you need it, you're going to remember it. If it's just academic, then you're probably not going to do so well. Okay? Okay, so let's run through all these different ideas of the future again. Let's start with will. Will can be used for this sudden idea. It can be used for something that is generally true. It can be used for a promise. It can be used for a fact, and it can be used for a prediction. Going to can be used for a forecast, and it can be used for a plan. We can also use intending, planning, aiming, and hoping to also talk about plans. But we need to remember that hoping to can also be used as a polite way of saying, sorry, but we can't. We have two ways of talking about arrangements in the future. We can use present ing, which is also called present continuous or present progressive, and we can use present simple. So the meeting is starting at 10 or the meeting starts at 10. Okay? There is also future continuous. I will be working on this for the next 6 weeks. And this talks about an ongoing process in the future. Okay? Now, future continuous can be used for many other things than that, but here for business English purposes, this is probably the best one to remember its use for. And lastly, we have future perfect. And this is most commonly used in business English when we talk about the end of a project, the time when we will be finished. We will have finished this by the 14th of February. Okay? The other important thing here to remember is native speakers, when they're talking about projects, they often talk in the passive, not the active. And so you will often hear, this will have been completed by. Okay? Passive rather than active, but the meaning is basically the same. The project is coming to an end on this date. Okay? So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time on English Lodge.